So, you have been seeing people on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Maybe it was my video. Was it my video? Stop it. It was my video, wasn't it? It was my video. All of these people who are putting real grass putting greens into their backyard, and you're thinking to yourself, I would like that. What do I need to have in order to do that? Well, you have come to the exactly correct video, because this is the start of the video series that I'm doing on my channel, where I'm going to walk through from beginning to end how you can have a putting green in your backyard and what that's going to take. So in this video, we're going to start with obviously the most important piece, which is what do you need? And specifically, what do you need for equipment? And because this stuff can start to get pretty spendy, I'm going to try to quantify what it's going to cost you as well, so you can make the decision on whether or not this actually is something that you want to pursue. So with that, let's get into it. Well, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to Our Lawn, and we are talking about putting green equipment. And we're going to take a little sidebar up front here, because we need to first contextualize what your goal is. Do you want a putting green managed at under 1/4 of an inch, under 2/10 of an inch, 3/16, 1/8, whatever, very, very short? Or do you just want a shorter cut section of your yard that you can use as a chipping green to kick a ball around on just for fun, with the understanding that it's never going to be a true golf course putting green? Well, if you are looking for the latter, really all you need is like a regular push reel mower, and that's going to be good enough for you to get something down to about 1/2 of an inch that you can mess around on, have a little fun on, and you'll be just fine. And that's about all you need. Now, if we want the functioning rolling green, that's what we're going to get into now. And now I'm going to follow the same structure of video that I did for my beginner lawn care, which is the equipment I'm going to classify as you must have, as you should have, and the things that are nice to have. And so what are the things that you need to have? So first of all, I'm going to rip through a handful of items that I'm assuming that you have reached. I'm going to start with a handful of items that I'm assuming you already have, having reached the levy of... No, I'm going to start with a handful of items that I'm assuming you already have, having reached this level of lawn care hobbydom. Probably a word, look it up. And those things are a normal rotary mower, which we're going to use for like the first scalp of bringing the height down of the area, getting the grass out of the way, going to be used to pick up leaves if you do that, those sorts of things. The next one is a fertilizer spreader, broadcast or drop. We're going to be working with a small area here in a putting green, so either will do just fine. A pump or battery powered sprayer, either handheld or backpack, all of it's fine. A sprinkler, enough hose to get said sprinkler to where you're putting the putting green, and a generic leaf rake. Shout out Turf Mechanic, I didn't forget it this time. So now that we're past the stuff that you probably already have, let's get into the putting green specific equipment. And the first and most important is going to be a reel mower. Now, we are chasing heights of cut that are below 1/4 of an inch. So we have left behind the generic So we have left behind the generic push reel mowers that you're going to find at your local hardware store. They do make some higher blade count reel mowers that are walk behind. Hudson Star McLean makes one that I had. Again, if we are going to be sub 1/4 of an inch, we really need a reel mower that's got 10 blades or more. Ideally, you're going to see 11 or 14 in the powered greens mowers that we're going to talk about. And with that, I really believe that's the place that you should be. You know, Swordman, Allets, those types of mowers can go down to around like 1/4 of an inch or so. However, those are almost more prohibitively expensive than finding a greens mower on the used market. And when I say greens mower, the most common that you're going to see, and what you're going to need to have at least one of, is either the Greensmaster 1000, the Greensmaster Flex 2100, something in one of the John Deere lines. They have B, C, E, SC. I don't really understand what the differences are, but one of those. Or Jacobson, I believe it's the PLM or Greens King lines. They probably have more than that, but those are the ones that I'm aware of. And so again, when we talk cost on Facebook Marketplace, in my area, there's usually 1 or 2 available for sale. More often than not, they live somewhere between $500 and $1,200. The vast majority of which are kind of in the middle between that $700 to $1,000 mark. And I'm going to say if you're anywhere $700 or below, you're doing quite well. I personally wouldn't be too excited about spending more than $1,000 on a used one. And then understand for these, unless you are a very handy person, maintenance on them is quite expensive. So, I mean, to sharpen the reel, to take that somewhere, which realistically you're not going to be able to do yourself no matter how handy handy you are. You're looking at about $200 if you're going to take it to a dealer, maybe even a little bit more than that. I had some maintenance work done and some repairs done on my Jacobson, and that trip to the dealer was $500. So anytime you need anything fixed on these things, understand you need to have the availability in your budget to be able to justify basically the cost of a new normal rotary mower every couple of years to be able to maintain these. Another piece of equipment that you're going to need to have when we're dealing with these greens mowers is some way to measure your height of cut. Now, you can DIY something like that, and that will work just fine, and it's going to be significantly cheaper than the measuring tools that are out there on the market. However, at this height, there's a certain degree of accuracy that matters, and I'm going to recommend you get one of those height of cut gauges. You can pick up a height of cut bar from just about any online equipment type retailer. I bought mine from R&R Products. I'm a big fan. However, they are expensive. You can be anywhere from like $130 to $200 for those things if you get the digital one. And then the next thing that I think when we get into putting greens at this level of shortcut turf is we need some sort of wider rake, either landscape, which is going to be somewhere around $50 to $60. I'd say at least 24. Ideally, we want to be 36 inches or more on the landscape rake, or the typical like leveling rakes, which those are going to run anywhere from like $100 to $200 depending on which one you get and how big it is. And the next thing, although it's not technically equipment, you are going to need sand, and you are going to want that sand to be masonry sand, or if you want to go through the effort, USGA spec sand. Realistically, us homeowners are going to be looking for masonry sand. And based on my experience and some of the research I've done on the frequency and amount that you should be top dressing your green on a regular basis, is probably a yard a year is going to be what you want for about 500 to 1,000 square feet. I have a quarry not too far from my house that I can go in, drive a pickup truck into, and for $50, they'll put a yard into the back of the truck. So figure that's about a $50 annual expense. So now we are through the must-haves for a putting green. Now we're going to get into the things that I believe you really should have in order to really effectively manage your green. And the first thing I think you should have is some sort of verticutter, dethatcher, type powered piece of equipment. Now, for me, that is the Sunjo dethatcher and verticutter. It does a halfway decent job of digging little trenches. We're going to be able to use that to alleviate any sort of thatch buildup or any type of issues where it's laying down, it's folding over on itself, it's causing all sorts of problems. And it's just a versatile and effective piece of equipment to have in places outside of the putting green as well. So I believe not only is it going to help you here, but it's something that you can use in the rest of your yard as well. The next thing that's going to be helpful is some sort of lawn roller. Now, we have a greens mower that's got a drum in the back. Those are very heavy. That's going to be perfectly fine and acceptable, likely for rolling your putting green. However, and something that was recommended to me by the fine gentleman on the Thirsty Thursday podcast was actually to mow a little bit less often and roll on those in-between days. Now, again, you can roll with just the greens mower. However, if you want to have a roller out there so you don't have to drag the mower out, fire it up, get it running, you can just run that roller back and forth. I think that's a good option and something that's useful to have, and I think that you should have. And the last thing that I've placed in the should have category is a broom that you don't mind getting dirt in. There are a lot of things in putting green management where a broom comes in handy, sweeping down sand into the canopy of the grass whenever you're going to top dress. I find it an effective tool in dealing with worm castings as well. It's a useful tool to get the grass to stand up, to make sure you're getting a good, consistent, and clean cut. Just an effective all-around tool to have in the tool belt, something you really should have available to you for your putting green. And so we have all the stuff that we really should have in order to maintain a putting green in our backyard. Now we're into the stuff that's nice to have. All of these things are kind of what's going to make your putting green a putting green. So let's start up front. What is really nice to have on our putting green? A hole cutter. A hole. Now, the reason I put this in nice to have and not must have is you can go out and put tees in the ground and putt to those and it will be just fine, because this starts to get a perfectly acceptable way to use it. You don't have to do this, which is why I have them as nice to have. So we're going to start with the tool that cuts the hole for us. Now, I think you can DIY some of these things with like PVC and that type of thing. I bought a hole cutter from R&R Products. It was about $140. If you want to get up into the hand lever extraction type tools, those are going to be $250, $300, but very effective purpose-built tools to get you a hole in your green. Now, what do we have to put in that hole? We got to buy a cup. The plastic plastic ones for just a regular hole. The 6-inch plastic cup is like $6-7. You can get that once you cut the hole, you set it in. I also have a cup setter, which is completely unnecessary. However, it's nice to have. It makes you feel all official. You put the cup in there, set the thing on the ground, step on it, push the cup into the right depth. It's fun to have. It was like 20-30 bucks. Then to go with your cup, we would like it to have a flag stick. That's just going to make it look nicer, look more official. I actually got the cup that I have and the flag stick as a set from R&R Products, something like $50-$55, something like that if I remember correctly. You can also, if you want to have multiple locations, they do sell the little practice putting green sets as well, which are the shorter little stick and the little bit smaller cup. You can get 2, 3, 4 of those for $15-$20. So those are a little bit cheaper option if you want to have multiple hole locations. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to put on the list here is a cup puller. You can get away with, typically you're probably going to be able to just pull it out by grabbing it, but sometimes they get lodged in there pretty good. And a purpose-built tool to reach in there, grab the cup, pull it out a little bit easier, I think is a nice thing to have. And the one that I have is cheap. It was like $7. So you can pick that up. It'll help you get the cup out of the hole a little bit easier. And now you'll be ready to go. You actually not only have a putting green, but you have one with a cup that you can putt to, a flag stick. It looks like the real thing. It makes you feel like you walk out into your backyard. You're walking out onto that true golf course lawn, which obviously everybody wants. And so there we go. That's my kind of introductory breakdown to the types of things that you're going to need to have a putting green in your backyard. I hope that's helpful. If you have some other ideas, some items I've forgotten, things you would suggest, maybe move into one of the other categories, please feel free. Leave that in the comments section below. I'd be happy to have that conversation, have those additional suggestions for people watching this video. Again, really hope it was helpful. This is going to be the first video in a series of me walking through introducing you to having and managing and maintaining a putting green in your backyard. I sincerely do appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along to that. Like the video if it was helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.